No, I will. Yes, sir. The online classes, is it a recording? Which means I can watch it a bit later. Because I just need it for Monday and Tuesday. Maybe it's done, I don't know. Like maybe Friday afternoon, because I got to love the tutorial. Just my own you can watch these stay in full communication about Good morning, everybody. Is this on? Yes, sir. Okay, great. How's everybody doing? Okay, who stayed up in an ungodly hour? It's very normal. Okay, it's very normal for now. Part of it is because what you're all feeling and experiencing is, oh my gosh, this is a lot of work. This is intense. This is a lot of new information. It's a lot of information. So many of you are a little stressed. So stress causes your brain to malfunction. Okay? And when your brain is stressed, your ability to think practically and implicationally is limited. Okay? So then your ability to get work done in a better time frame is a lot more difficult because you're thinking from a position of stress rather than a position of this is exciting, this is fun, all of those are. So just know that it is actually quite normal for you to feel this way, but this will not be SPS the entire time. We understand that this is just very normal because it is a lot of information. It's a lot of stuff thrown at you kind of all at once. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pull in the ropes a little bit, slow down a little bit, and give you some just practicals and give you a little bit more time, but also give you some things, and we'll give you some answers to some questions that I know you guys were having with the VRI and different things like this. But I want to start with this is a pioneering school. How many of you have okay, let me ask it this way. How many of you, when you started doing math, that were maths, how many of you knew that you couldn't start at algebra? Everybody should be raising their hand, right? Unless you came out of the room going, x equals 2. That would be impressive. But all of us had to start earlier, right? And you had to build somewhere. You had to go somewhere. So when you see all this new information, don't think of yourself as like, how am I not getting this? I feel really dumb. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Guys, you're new. You're new at this whole process. When it comes to color coding, you're like, what is a connective? That's okay. And sometimes when you ask the questions, a staff or myself or Riley will come up being like, okay, connective is this, and we'll explain it as almost it's the easiest thing in the world to someone understand. And you're like, I still don't. It's okay. You've got to practice. It's the same way all of us experience in school. Is a teacher would say, okay, what's 2 plus 2? And you'd be like, 6. You kind of just shoot in the dark. You kind of guess, right? But then eventually you got to the point where you're like, no, 2 plus 2 is 4. Right? And you knew it, you're confident with the answer. That's where Riley and I and your staff are at. Is we know connective, that's this, right? But we had to work a long time to get to that point where we actually understand what the connective is. So when you ask a question and we answer that question as if it's like clear as day and it's super obvious, that might only be because it is to us, because we put in the time. So when all of you, I said 2 plus 2, all of you thought in your head, it's 4, right? Hopefully. So that all of you automatically knew this is the answer. So that's the same way we are helping walk you through this process, is we know the answers and we're trying to guide you through, but we're not just trying to throw the answer out at you. Okay? So part of what you're wrestling with, and I explained this to some of you, but I'll say it more publicly, is that you are developing neural pathways in your mind, but also readjusting other ones that have been built in the mind. Okay, so you're starting something new, but you're rewriting something that's already been there. So for example, most educational systems in our society today is a person up in front who gives you every single answer that there is and says, memorize these answers so you can make an A on the test, right? And that is the basic form of learning, is just remembering facts. But how many of us know that when we get past that test, if we were asked the same questions that were on, like 2, we would totally fail that test. We totally would. Why? Because we're programmed, we're trained, our neural pathways have been created in a way that we memorize the information to answer the test so that we can forget about it later to create more space in our brains. Okay? But in this classroom, what we're giving you permission to do is discover and learn for yourself. I am not, and there's a phrase in education that said, I am not a sage on the stage. I am not a sage on the stage, but I am a guide on the side. My job is not necessarily to give you every answer under the sun about the Bible. I don't know every answer under the sun about the Bible, right? So, but what I do know, I will come alongside you, the staff will come alongside you, and they will walk with you and say, okay, hey, how about, let's think this way. What do you think? Okay, why do you think that's a connective? Is that a connective? Okay, I can see what you're tracking with it. Okay, highlight it. It's not that big a deal. That's fine. And then you'll learn and you'll grow and you'll understand. Okay, so like in my Bible, my SBS Bible, I'll look at the first few books I did, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I highlighted things that didn't even make sense to highlight. You know, that's fine. And so what I want to say is like, this is a pioneering school, but it's also a pioneering thing for you individually, right? Pioneering can be messy. In fact, it is messy. It's chaotic. It messes with your brain. But what it also does is mess with your heart. It messes with your integrity. It messes with your vulnerability. It makes you feel things that you didn't know you were feeling. Like it kind of just messes with your internal self, right? And so for like Riley and I and the staff, you've obviously at this point seen us even make mistakes in the front, and we're like, oh shoot, okay, let's do this and let's pivot, right? It's because it's a pioneering school, right? And so what I'll say this is I pioneered multiple schools in my life.
So true.
And what I'll say is that the pioneering schools are the most unique because God handpicks people for every single school. But there's something always unique about the individuals in a pioneering school. It's because they are the first ones that actually come together and build something that's totally beautiful. And never will another school look like this. So this is the first SBS Fire and Fragrance, right? There are some things that Fire and Fragrance carries that we have as pillars in our school. So such as prayer and worship. We're the only SBS, to my knowledge, who have a requirement of prayer and worship every single morning. Right? We're the only one that I know of that does that. We're the only SBS I know that requires ministry nights. We're the only SBS I know of that requires ministry opportunities on Thursdays. You guys will actually go out and do some evangelism and all that kind of stuff. Why did we do this? It's a great question. Because what it did is we had to figure out, okay, most SBSs have that's about roughly 10 to 12 extra hours that takes away from your homework time. So many SBSs actually give you 10 extra hours, roughly, give or take, to do homework. But what we said is prayer and worship is a priority. Evangelism is a priority. Ministry night and community is a priority. Because many of you may have heard that if you're an SBSer, you'll go hide in a cave and come out like Gollum going, have your Bible. My precious. And like, you just come out and you're like, who is that person, right? You like haven't seen them for months, and who are they, right? So you kind of hide away. But how many of us found out during COVID that if you isolate yourself, you become a little psycho. You become a little crazy, right? So a lot of this process came into of like, we gotta get SBSers in the prayer. We gotta get SBSers up in front doing worship. We gotta get SBSers with the DTS, get involved with everything that God is doing on the base, so that when people see people who are in love with the Bible, they're not like they just gotta go hide away and they'll come out kind of a creep. But it's people that will go study their guts out, but then they go and they know how to pray. Why? Because they met Him in the secret place. So what you're modeling is much more than just like a Bible study nerd. What you're modeling is that you can study the Bible, be a nerd, and then go and evangelize like crazy. Right? So there's a little bit of all of that we are pioneering. So we've had to look at the homework. We've had to adjust things. We've had to change some things around to go, okay, we want to make time for these things. How do we do that? And so some of that pioneering process is going to look a little bit messy. It's going to look a little bit chaotic at times. It's going to look like we might have to shift and move things. That's okay. But what I'm saying to you all is God asked you to be a part of the pioneering school. So the question is why? Why did He ask you personally to be a part of a school where you have to pioneer, you have to wrestle through some of these things? I had to ask this question. The staff had to ask this question. Riley had to ask this question. Of like, so for myself, what I asked is like, okay, God, why me? Why do I need a pioneer in our school? Pioneering is not easy. Like I said, I pioneered multiple schools. It's a lot of work. But one of the things that actually makes it really difficult is it's very vulnerable. I'm up here in front, And you've seen me make mistakes. And I will make a lot of mistakes. But it's my identity in Christ that defines who I am, not you.
Good said.
Right? And the same goes for you, is when you're doing your homework and you feel flustered and you feel a little crazy and you're like, I can't get it, why? And you just want to punch your computer, right? And don't punch it, but that's how you feel on the inside. Take a moment to pause and go, God, what am I pioneering in myself? What are you wanting to reveal to me in this moment? Why am I wrestling in this way? What are you trying to show me? How can I actually go from point A to point B? How can I actually recognize what the emotions I am feeling and how do I surrender them to you? How can you teach me in this process? Holy Spirit is one of the main ways Holy Spirit is described, or one of the first ways he's described, is the helper. So yesterday, I'm like going through the BRI and I'm like, man, it took a while for us to get through authorship of Philemon. I was like, man, to me it's right there, right? Paul's the author, and it says in the dictionaries, and next question. So then I'm going, okay, God, why are we wrestling with this? What's going on? And what I feel like he was saying is that everyone in the room is pioneering new things, new thoughts. Pioneering is challenging in that way. It's because it's so new. But what also you're wrestling with is that standard model of education. Is that, oh shoot, I didn't get an answer. It wasn't given to me, I have to go find it. How many of us know it is the glory of God to conceal a matter, but the riches of kings to search it out? Yeah. I believe I am looking at a bunch of kings and queens who want to search out the mysteries of God, find who He is, and not just say, "Hey, here's the answer. It is Paul through all of these books. It is Moses wrote all of these books. Here's the answers. Take it, memorize it, so then you can pass the test, and then you can go to college." Right? Really, that's kind of how we've been raised in education. The U of M does that a lot differently. So that is the new thing you're creating. That is the pioneering thing within you that you are creating on top of a whole school that is being pioneered. Does that make sense? Yes. Does that kind of give you a little bit of like, you're not crazy. It is tough. It is tough, right? But it is hard. I'm using my words very specifically. Okay? It is tough. It is challenging. But it is also so fun. So when you get into, and this whole seminar time is dedicated to learning it, not to getting it right. It's to learn it. So good. Okay? Most of us, we get paper and we get the word homework in front of us. We're like, oh my gosh, I got to ace the test now. Right? No, that's not at all the goal. The goal is, what was the foundation of our pillars? What was the foundation? To know God. That's the goal. So if you make a C on a book, but you found God, who cares about the letter? I don't care. Right? Obviously, we want you guys to pass and all those different things, great. But if you meet God, then I really could care less about what grade you got. So throw that, honestly, I'm going to say demon, out of the room and say, get rid of the performance mindset. Throw that out, because we're here to study the Word of God and allow Him to teach us. But if we have this idea that we have to perform before God, we have to get all the things right, then we're going to have this thing in our mind that says, I can't find God because I have to do it perfect.
Yeah, that's true.
Right? And He didn't make you to do every single thing exactly perfect. Otherwise, life would look a lot different. Okay? And as you see with me and the staff and with Riley, like, we're not perfect either. Have grace with us in the process. But we trust you. I think for me and pioneering the school, it's a bit vulnerable in the way of, I actually don't know all of you that well. That's hardly at all, to be completely honest. Like, I read, your information and how we accepted you and all that kind of stuff, but that's about it. Right? So for then me to just kind of stand up here and say, all right, like, I'm going to teach you a bunch of information, you're like, how do I trust this guy? Why? Because I've done it before. Guys, go fact check me, right? That's okay. You can do that, right? So we're going to make mistakes, and we're gonna fall, and we're going to get right back up, and we're going to continue building this thing out. Cool? All right. So all of that to be said is go to your BRI. Give me a thumbs up when you get to your BRI. Give me a high, just so it's a little easier to see. And I want you to hold up your hands. Think about Moses when you hold his hand for a really long time. And if you let it down, like, did someone just die? You're like, take it off. All right, sweet. Everybody's done it. Okay. So have your hands ready to type on your keyboard or on your phone or whatever you got it on. Hopefully you don't have it just on your phone. Yeah, on your BRI, because I'm going to walk through the BRI, give you some and kind of help you have some of the answers here, because what we're going to do is we're going to move on from the BRI. I am going to give you some of the answers, but what we're going to do is we're going to dive more in depth into the BRI with Titus and Ephesians and Mark as we go through the seminar weeks. So we're going to give a little bit more information than you would have after seminar. But this is all to help kind of build that process. So what we did was give you guys time to wrestle, figure it out, even get a little irritated with that process. So then you're like, okay, this is how you do it. And you're kind of getting that gear going. The irritation comes because of that neural pathway you're starting to develop. Okay? All right, so who wrote the book? The internal evidence can be found, as you guys said. You guys did a lot of this as Philemon 1, Philemon 19 and 21. Paul is the first person mentioned in the book. And Paul mentions that he is the one writing the letter to Philemon with his own hand. Okay? External evidence suggests that he may have dictated it to Timothy, and Timothy wrote it. Okay? So then a conclusion there, it would be something along the lines of Paul very likely dictated the letter to Timothy while Timothy wrote the letter, except when Paul says, I write this with my own hand, because that is his signature. Okay? Everybody got dating. Did everybody get the dating? Okay, what's the dating that you guys got? 60, 61? Okay. Say it again? 58 and 64? It would be between them. You can get that a little narrower, okay? But that's fine for now, that's great. Okay, and then from where was it written? Okay, that one's also quite clear. It's right there in the text. Written from in prison in Rome. Okay, so Paul was in house arrest in Rome during his older age when it was written. Okay, to whom was it written? Man, it is hard. All right. To whom was it written? Okay, what did you guys get from that? Again, this one should be pretty clear. Yeah, exactly. So, and what we were kind of noticing on some of these is that it was like, we quickly found out you guys are a lot of thinkers, which is awesome. But oversimplified, right? So it's like, boom, you open up that dictionary and you're reading through and you're like, okay, it says that, you wrote to the house church in Colossae, that Philemon was a part of, and these people. All right, great, you got your answer. Move on to the next dictionary, so you have two external sources. It says pretty much the same thing. Great. Conclusion, write out your own words, what it all kind of concludes, what your findings were. Boom, move on to the next question. So roughly, some of you should take like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, right? As we progress throughout the school, some of these questions will be harder than other questions. So take, for example, authorship on the book of Hebrews. No one knows. So there's a lot of speculation of who it could be. There's a lot of interpretation of who it could be. So, but when it comes to like actually finding solid evidence, it's not that one's not there. Okay? So some of these will be different for different folks, and that's part of the discovery process. Okay? All right, to whom was it written? Okay, we just said that. Okay, and then as you go, you can build on this stuff, right? You can build and go, okay, to whom was it written? Okay, Philemon. Who is Philemon, right? So you can go more in depth and more in detail as you get into the next steps after BRI. You can come back to the BRI and continue to type stuff in as you move along into the next step. So the BRI is a live document the whole time until you turn on the assignment. Yes?
Question. Is it always supposed to be in a sentence? Or can you just put two?
I will say this, and staff, you can correct me, I'll hold this thing really close, I would say conclusion needs to be more of a sentence structure, whereas internal and external evidence can just be like, bam, this is what it said, right? But your conclusion needs to be a concluded thought of what did you discover, what did you see, conclusion, your own words, all of that. Make sense? Agree?
Something else is good.
What did you say yesterday?
That the external needs to be like sentences you formulated.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
She did.
would we rather that?
The conclusion, I agree with your
Yeah.
conclusion part, as long as the external still is those formulated sentences, not bullet points. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Don't bullet point, still have a sentence structure, but yeah, so do it more in sentences rather than
Yeah.
Yes.
Just a clarifying question. Yesterday I was doing the GRI and then I went back to do the internal. And then I remembered you can quote things, but isn't it asking for where in the Bible it is? So wouldn't it be a quotation? Or should it just still say, like, not word for word, that it's Philemon?
Yeah, if you quote it, like quote a scripture and you just like put it in there, yeah, quote it.
So it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, historical method. Is everybody there? Okay. What is the historical setting of the book and culture of the audience? Okay, I'm going to go through this one quickly so that you would research it. That's great information. It's helpful information, but just not for Philemon, right? So don't go that direction. Stick to the BRI for Philemon. What is helpful for Philemon? So slavery, for example, would be kind of your main one for Philemon. What are things about slavery in the Roman culture? So stick with slavery on that one. So, like I said yesterday, as Roman culture was established on slaves, everyone they conquered, they took in, so you can be writing this down. They took in to be slaves, everyone they conquered. There were many different types of slaves. Slaves who worked in mines, rowboats, and other owned towns, so there would be city slaves. Others worked and lived in family houses. And then slaves made up actually around 30% of the population. Okay. And then some other information about slaves is that penalties for runaway slaves were severe, and it was largely dependent on the owner of that slave who owned them. Okay. So this could include beatings, brandings, execution, and depending on the severity of the escape and discretion, the discretion of the master. Okay. So with Philemon, that would then go, okay, what did Philemon or Onesimus do to Philemon? That would fall into interpretation, right? Because it doesn't actually say, right? So then when we get into the interpretation step, that's where you dive a little bit more into detail about what can we find potentially about Onesimus that he may have done that might result in X, Y, Z, right? So that would fall into the interpretation step. which we'll get to, okay? So the BRI is building a framework to help you interpret what you are reading, okay? All right, so when was the church founded? This was pretty much everybody had a question on this, okay? So I'm just going to give you the answer. It can be found in Colossians 4, and it can be, with some digging, it can also be found in Nelson's Bible Dictionary. I didn't look at the other ones, but I'm sure it's in there. Looking at Epaphras. So the church was founded in Colossae by Epaphras. Is the answer to that one, okay? And again, go do when you have the time, but for the sake of the seminar, I'm giving you these answers so that we can move on and learn and grow. So the answers can be found, we just do have to do a little bit extra digging. Okay, who makes up the church?
Question on that.
Yeah.
That's, like I found that, but I continued to search for time.
Yeah.
And I found it having a pulse
Thank you.
for missionary.
Yes.
Is that like, how in depth do we need to go with the
It's the same kind of thing with like a Hebrews and authorship. You're not going to find the answer. They've been scholars who are way smarter than every one of us in this room have been looking for the answer for years. It hasn't been found, so we're not going to find it in a 2-hour BRI session. It would be crazy if you did. And so with every BRI, there are going to be questions that are asked that may not be very answerable. That's done on purpose, okay? Because what it is doing is it's creating questions within your mind to discover. But if we completely remove the question from the BRI process, you wouldn't even think in that direction, right? You wouldn't even have done the research to find that it was, during that time. So you're not going to get, he wrote it in 60 AD, right? Exactly, right? They don't say that, right? So some of these questions, if you cannot find it in your research, just couldn't find it, or not applicable, or something like that, right? And then let's say your staff did find something when they did the school, or when they're checking your work and they did find something. It is their job to help guide you and coach you. Actually, there is something you can find. Here's how you get to that place, okay? So a lot of it, again, is that discovery process of going, okay, where is God? How do I find Him? What are the questions? What are those things? And again, we're not giving you all those answers. And not all of those answers are given. Yes, James.
How much effort is it before you come to the conclusion? Like sometimes you just have a look.
Yeah.
Sometimes the answer is not.
You definitely need to look. Otherwise, you're just totally skipping the question entirely. So you definitely need to look. But I would say you dive through, and if you're like spending 30 minutes and you found nothing on it, I would definitely move on. Because again, you got a lot that you got to sift through. And it might be when you get to the interpretation step, a question pops up that's like, bam, that triggered all the way back to that question. Oh wait, shoot, I didn't ask that question, and then you find the answer to that question. And that happens all the time. Okay, does that make sense? So don't spend so much time just like looking for it. And again, you'll learn as we go how to research, how to dive into that information.
Yeah, just like on the time frame. I asked this because class started. Is it okay to like instead of having like specific dates, but to reference that this happened when that happened?
If that's the best you can get, yes.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, you'll have like books like Kings. Kings has a lot of dates, right? It's like bam, 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 bam. Here's tons of different dates in Kings. Whereas other books have like no dating at all. You kind of have to use other things that we do know to credit. Okay, this is likely the time frame that this book was written, stuff like that. Okay. Okay, who makes up the church? Who makes up the church? What do we know about who makes up the church? What does it say? Yeah.
Philemon and Apphia and his son. The church was also composed of people who were already disciples. It says that in Acts, and they were also the Christian community who were residents of Asia Minor.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Did everybody catch that? Yes.
Are we just doing the internal one, or can we also say something about an external?
This is external. So in the historical method, it says here, hold up. What's the word I just said? Okay, so in the historical method section, right where it says, what is the historical setting of the book? Make sure to answer each question, each sub-question adequately. This will significantly improve your understanding as you interpret. 2 external sources in total for answering this question. So this question would be, what is the historical setting of the book? So you just need for all of that a minimum of 2 external sources. Yeah.
Can I add on to who was made at the church then? I found that it was a really mixed and diverse church of people who were Jewish, Greek, and Pythagorean. I don't know what that one necessarily means. I wanted to know to talk about, but I ran out of time. Yeah, so that's just another little additional thing.
Great. So as you dig, you'll get bigger and deeper answers, right? And that's okay. And again, that's up to how much time you have. Okay, so then your staff will poke and pry at different things. That's like, hey, we could have actually gone into more detail here. Didn't need to go into as much detail here. That's not as necessary for the book of Philemon. Different stuff like that. So again, they are coaches. They are helping you navigate the word and the book specifically to go, okay, this is what will help build to interpretation, which will help apply things to your life, okay? Which is the final step of this application. So then what are the strengths and weaknesses of the church? Or persons being addressed within the church. What are the strengths and weaknesses? Turn to Philemon 5, verse 5. So this one, there's not a whole lot on it. It's super, super brief. But this is what I could find of the church. Oh yeah, come on. Do it again. Alright, can you read it for us? Because you're the most excited.
Because I hear of your love and of the faith that you have toward the Lord Jesus and for all the saints.
There you go. So that's what I put. I literally put Philemon carries the love for all the saints. Okay, so then that's your answer for that one. It doesn't have to be super in depth, right? It can be real simple because that's all I could find. Okay? All right, literary structure or literary method is it's a Greek letter and then it's a letter of recommendation. Yes. Yeah.
I didn't necessarily put the thing you just said about Philemon and something, but I did flip in Colossians. Is that fine? Because it's the same church. It says the same things about in Colossians about the church, about the love of the saints and the faith of Jesus. Is that fine, or should I only look?
I would quote what is in Philemon as well, because that's the immediate book that you're studying. So that's going to be the most relevant information for you and understanding your book. So it is a Greek letter structure, and it is a letter of recommendation. Does anyone remember what a letter of recommendation is? Can you explain it to me? Or explain it to me?
Like from the meeting to CD or something, or is it from on this thing?
No, it's what I was saying yesterday when I was teaching about Bible. Do you remember?
I feel not exactly what you said, but
Well, not exactly.
yeah, I think your letter of recommendation is someone that has maybe more like experience or authority in an area, recommending someone else.
Pretty much, yeah. It's basically Paul is an esteemed leader in the faith, and he is recommending that Philemon receive Onesimus back. So it's literally a letter of recommendation for Onesimus. Okay? Yeah.
I would have thought, and I put down epistle.
Yes, it is an epistle as well.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that letter is epistle letter. Yeah. Yes.
I have a question on the previous one. It says strength and weaknesses. Can you just definition this?
I couldn't find any weaknesses.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if there did you find a weakness?
I don't know if it's relative, but I said because there's so many. This is what I said. The church was made up of a lot of different ethnic groups, making Paul's dedication towards the church a subject of controversy.
Okay, where did you find it?
This is super good research, Brett. I think it's super awesome. However, when we're studying one book, I really want you to just focus on that book. And so when we're through Philemon and everything, we'll get to Colossians. We can quote things from Philemon and Colossians, but we have not studied Colossians, nor are we there yet. So what I would recommend is that you try to really stick within the book and what's discovered in this book, if that makes sense. But I see where you're going, and I think it's very smart, and it is going to help you a lot in the future.
So how would you say that?
Also, if you're looking at a BRI on Philemon and you're like, dang, this is great internal evidence from other books, the only thing is it's at a completely different time, so it's actually not relevant to the book that we're studying for the purpose that it was written, the time that it was written, the people it was written to. There might have been 15 people added to that church that had nothing to do with Philemon or had nothing to do with the Colossians time. So when we're looking at these things, just make sure we're not jumping ahead or going back in history when that was already solved. This is going to come in handy when we get to Corinthians. 1st and 2nd Corinthians are written at different times, and it's the same church, but it's different purposes within each book. So, yeah.
Great. All right, survey method. Okay. All right, what is the main idea of the book? Okay. Paul appeals to Philemon to receive Onesimus back as a brother rather than a slave. Paul also desires to do nothing without the consent of Philemon, as he still owns Onesimus as a slave. Paul is providing Philemon with a choice. Okay. And there can be more written. So in my SBS, I have a requirement of word count. We are requiring a minimum of 50 to 75 words on this. So you may need to write a little bit more about that, expound a little bit more on that than what I did. So just be aware of that. And then what is the primary purpose the book was written? Is Paul, again, this is 50 to 75 words. I didn't write 50 to 75 words. But Paul is appealing to Philemon about Onesimus. That's literally what I wrote, is the main reason the book was written. Yes?
So is the minimum 50 to 75 and then you can go over that, or is it in between?
It is in between 50 to 75 words. The reason for this is that it is actually a muscle that you have to learn how to summarize. Many people just begin to just write. And they have novels that they end up writing, and it's actually working a muscle to make you have fine-tuned wording and phrasing on how you actually write. Yes, no?
Okay, here's my question. Yesterday you explained kind of what you, in a very short teaching, what you felt that this book's very powerful for these specific reasons, main point, purpose, whatever. And then I went home and I was reading it, and then I saw that, but I think before I saw that, I saw something different. Can I write that instead? Or am I missing the point of the book by not writing it?
No. There's going to be multiple ways. Yeah. I would say, but that main theme you got to get. Right? The main theme of forgiveness and reconciliation.
Okay, so that does happen.
Yes, that needs to be in there. Because that is the main theme. That is the reason it was written. Yeah, James.
Yeah, my main point was to do with, so basically it was to do with Matthew 28. I was drawing from what Jesus said in Matthew 28. Obviously, I've not studied that book. Can I still draw correlation?
What do you think, Riley?
Okay, explain your thought.
So when Jesus says, go and teach, go and make disciples and teach them to obey everything I've taught you. I was like, my main point was Paul was
literally walking this out with Philemon and Onesimus to obey everything Jesus is taught. And like this is an active.
Yeah. Okay, so that is interpretive, and we're gonna get there. So that, yes, use that, but I'm gonna say use it what we're gonna teach you today. Use this as one of your examples. I think you should pull it in as literary context, and we'll explain what that is. But for the main idea in reason written, this is still observation, looking at what is happening at this time, and then being able to look at just this book. And so there is a space for that coming today that we will tell you, and you should definitely do that one as one of your little things we're going to show you.
So again, the BRI, observational still, and what it is building a framework so that when you get into an interpretation, you can go look at the main reason, all of those different things, and build into interpretation. Cool? Yes, question?
Okay. So I know for other books it might be different, but in Philemon, it's the main idea of the book and the primary purpose for writing this book is basically the same.
In this one.
Yeah. But would it then be okay to write the exact same paragraph, or do you have to change it up a bit? Because if it's the same and you need 50 to 75 words, you basically need 150 words of copy and paste.
I would encourage you to think through the reason and then the main idea. So the reason may be because of his love for Onesimus, whereas the main idea would be more for forgiveness and reconciliation. So it's a little bit different, I would say, actually, because the reason it was written is because Paul loves Onesimus. He's like, man, this guy's a brother. He was once useless, and now he's useful, right? So exactly. And so then, the main reason it was written is because Onesimus went from death to life, right? So there's that appeal to Philemon of, hey, this guy's no longer a bondservant, but he's a brother, right? So that's the reason it was written, right? To affirm who Onesimus now is. He is now useful, right? Whereas the main idea is talking about that reconciliation and forgiveness for Philemon to receive this letter and go, I need to forgive Onesimus for the wrongs that he did, right? So that's the main idea. Then the reason that, yes. Last question. We're going to move on.
Danielle.
No, you did have your hand up first.
I was just wondering if you could go through the second part of the literary and just what the requirements are. Is it verse verses or deep side? What do you think is the best for that?
A lot of it comes down to the way the letter is structured. So for my SBS, I would just put epistle for the epistles, and if it's a specific kind of epistle, so in this one it's a letter of recommendation, and then I would explain what a letter of recommendation is. And then I also put like Greek, it's a Greek epistle structure. So there's it's structured in the way that the Greeks would structure a letter. And then that's kind of, so you just do some research on what like the literary structure of the book would be. And so it doesn't need to be super in detail, but just enough there to kind of get your wheels turning.
For the opening address, what some things that we probably closing?
What do you mean?
Do you have to add in that question to what verses are each of them?
No, yeah. You don't have to. Yeah.
You're just taking, okay, in the scriptures, Philemon 1:1 is this opening address. 1, 2 through 4 is the next one. You don't have to explain outside of that. Just do the verse references and you can just.
So then the body would just be one verse. You can put more.
Oh, you want to have to do that whole thing like that, right?
It just that, because that's what it's asking for. Is okay. Opening address, verse references, write them here. 1:1 to 1:2. Bam. Okay. Blessing. Where's the blessing?
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have this in my SBS.
Yeah. Blessing. Okay. 1:2 to 1:4, or wherever you think it is. Your staff will help you. Maybe it's a little bit off. The Thanksgiving, and then the body. Maybe it's chapter 1 through 5. I don't know, wherever it might be. But you're just writing the verses.
Yeah.
And you can chunk the whole thing, not just this one verse.
Yeah, you can just be like, yeah, one, two. That's
Verses.
just
I
verses.
would cut it off.
No explanation. You're good.
Great. Thank you, Danielle, for saying that, because I didn't actually have the breakdown of it in my SBS, so thank you for saying that. Cool. Okay, so that is your BRI. We are going to move on, okay? Let us take a... seven-minute stretch break. You looked at the time and you're Can all the staff come to the front, please?
There's so much cross reference regarding phonetic calculation. So now I understand it. Now it's like, okay, let's
like she will do that all the time. And she's so expressive too, just like you. It makes so weird. I wonder if I can find everything You love Billy.
All right, let's come back. Take our seat. Or sit in our seat. Don't take your seat. You sit in our seat.
Oh my gosh, I'm really so sorry.
Don't be sorry.
I feel so bad, but I didn't know you were going to talk. I was just
All right. So what I have our lovely staff doing here. Who are my celebrator staff? Okay. So what they are doing is they are doing the inside observations. I put them on the spot just to write the inside observations. What you will see here is that they are doing it in different ways. So some are bullet pointing. I actually did more sentences in mine, where they're just pulling out those key phrases that are highlighted as they are going through the text, okay? So this is what inside observations can look like, okay? And Haley actually did some of the literary tools that she has here as well, which will help you in your outsides, okay? So, Paul, Timothy, Philemon, Apathia, and Archippus, our brother, our sister, right? So he's just going through like what are the main words that are there, and how does this build the insides? Okay, so then what this will do is create would be your division here. All right, so this was what did we say? Division introduction.
1 through 7.
Okay, so this is your chart, or your one of your segments for your chart. Okay, so then
Segment.
this is your segment for one of the segments within your chart. Okay, so then this is your insides. Okay, so this is something what it should look like. And here Haley just did the verse 17 and everything in there, right? So then she just kind of bullet pointed what it was. I realized in my SDS I did a lot more work than I had to. I didn't know this. I wrote a lot more sentence structure than just bullet points. So when I figured out that you could do it this way as well, I was like, this is going to blow my mind. This is so helpful. Okay, and then Bree again did Paul, prisoner, Timothy, to Philemon and church, grace, peace, your love, faith, praying, sharing, faith, effective, full knowledge, joy, comfort from love, hearts refreshed, bold to the. So you can read this and go, okay, I know what Philemon's about, right? So you're observing the text. You're only using words directly from the text, okay? So that is what your insides look like. Does that make sense? Okay, Mo, you have a question? No, you're good. No, you never should start asking questions. I will tell you when you need to move on. Yeah.
Okay, so obviously you're going to teach us the next part, but I wrote like repeated. I wrote the word repeated, and then I wrote the word in quotation marks because I was trying to.
So you did something kind of like this?
Yeah, but I didn't write it on the side like that.
You wrote it in here in parentheses?
Yeah, so I knew when I was going to do the outside, that's why I was putting it in there. Or
Great.
even some of them I asked a question next to it.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, that's why I'm observing it. Is that okay? Or should I just quickly do the outside?
you would do it on the outside, so we would ask for only things within the inside to be only from the text. But you have the right train of thought, because having the I'll use this one. So having the who, so you would say observation, Philemon, right? And then this would be in parentheses who. Okay? So let's go through the manual, and this will make more sense.
Do you want me to explain that?
I can read through the manual and you come out after. Alright, so in the manual, it is step 7. Alright. Primary observations, otherwise PO, supporting observations, SO, follow-up questions. Let me put this on the TV. Is the TV on, Matthew?
We'll be in a few seconds.
Okay.
There we go.
Hurry up. So slow. Alright. Okay. Locate your main observations. Okay? So now, you're taking what you've observed inside, and you're taking the main observation. Okay? So for example, Paul, prisoner. Prisoner could be a main observation there. Paul could be a main observation there for you. Okay? So you take your main observations, then connect them to the insides of your chart. This must be clearly shown using arrows, highlights, etc., and linked charts to show a highlighted connection, for example. Okay? So what that means is, let's use this one because I already did a little box here. Okay, let's say the main observation for us here is in 1.1b, Philemon, who. You can do, so in SBS Charter, you'll do like a highlight. So so you're going to highlight this one, purple. And then we're going to highlight Philemon and purple. So then when your grader goes, they know that the purple is connected to the purple one. Okay? So just in some form or fashion, you need to make it clear that this from your inside is connected to this one on the outside. Okay? So that when we say this must be clearly shown using arrows, highlights, etc., or a highlighted connection, that's what we mean. Okay? Also, input your references for the primary observation. Literary observation tools are used to define the type of observation you have discovered clearly. So that, again, the literary observation tools is that whole list. That would be these, okay? So we got the who, we have the who. So you need to mention what is the literary observation tool that you use to observe this. Okay, so in this case, it's a who. Okay? But if you saw that there was a contrast, there's nothing there. Or something, you would put contrast, okay? And again, you'll get better at this as we go. That's why who is an easy one to kind of see for the example. Okay? Yep.
I think I understood wrong yesterday because I had a note here that said that inside observations, it's keywords, things that stand out, and I literally just put the words. It's not really full sentences, it's just like words that
Okay.
stand out. Would you be able to do that as well, or do I have to go
For now, stick with it. And then when you turn it in, we'll have your coaches, because you're not really getting graded on it, we'll have your coaches help navigate you through the lessons. Yeah, yes.
So is the outside boxes, when you're making those connections between the inside keywords and the outside tools, are you writing full sentences about those tools?
We'll get into that.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
Okay, so then, literary observation tool, this will aid you in your future teachings and study as you progress through the Bible, okay? Any additional questions are listed as supporting observations to your primary observations, okay? Supporting observations add depth and detail to the primary observation. Okay, so supporting observation is not necessary, but it is helpful. Okay? So then a supporting observation would be SO, and then I'm gonna add prisoner. It says prisoner in 1A, yeah?
Just change the top to PO instead of OB.
Sorry.
Thanks.
Yeah.
P. Sorry. This OB was my SPS, so I just kind of went with my version. Okay, so PO, primary observation, supporting observation. So the supporting observation here would be, prisoner. Okay? And then you basically what you're doing is you're creating what we call a full build. Okay, so you have a build and then you have a full build. A full build will go all the way into a timeless truth or a character nature of God. A build, not a full build, just a build, is just a thought, right? So you could be like, okay, here's another observation. The grace is from God. It's not grace from someone else. So another PO could be, grace is from God. Okay? So that could be just a build, and then you'll do a full build. There's a requirement of one full build per segment. Okay? This will make more sense as we go through the manual. Per segment. Okay, so primary observations, these are the direct, most evident details found in the text. Primary observations focus on a passage's who, what, when, and where. This includes identifying key people, events, locations, timelines, and overarching themes directly noted in the scripture. The aim is to remain objective, noticing what the text explicitly says before moving on. Okay, and then supporting observation, and Riley just chime in whenever you need to. Supporting observations dig deeper into the text to understand more subtle nuances and details that support the primary observation. So, for example, the word prisoner, we'll say this in Paul. Let's do Paul there instead. So the word prisoner describes Paul's situation in a little bit more detail. Okay? So then it gives more subtle nuances and details that support the primary observation. They do this by asking additional questions about your primary observation. So, for example, where is Paul? In prison. Okay? So, supporting observations are not required. However, they will assist in greater depth with your primary observation and allow for clear understanding. These supporting observations must be in the same book being studied and within the same segment break as the primary observation. Okay, so as you'll see here, again, this is another example. So it's highlighted, so it shows me this is connected to this on the inside. What is being contrasted here? Okay, your answer, 1-1. You've got to make sure you have your verse reference in there. Okay, and then you have your supporting observation here. What is the author comparing in this verse? So then this is what we would call a full build. So then we jump into interpretations after your supporting observation or your observation if you don't have a supporting observation. Okay? Does that make sense? Roughly makes sense.
Yeah.
Riley, would you like to come up here and explain in a different way that will help the classroom?
Six.
Yes.
Must be right like watch this contrast and it
I'm going to do a full example, okay? So I'll walk you through how we're going to do it. Just watch and then we can ask more questions, okay? So you've got the manual. Seth is reading through literally verbatim what it says because you will go back to the manual. And so you'll need to now see when you're reading it, what are we talking about again? Okay, so if he's doing this introduction, going through it, let's do an actual example of what it would look like. So,
I'm so sorry. Come on. I'm so sorry. Haley, good work here. Give it up for Haley. The point was to. Sorry, David. And
attention. We also, Jenna gets here on Sunday. We're excited. David, we're praying for you. Okay, but again, this is just to show you there's different ways, and it might look different with other classmates, but it's up to them and the grader to make sure that it's still good. We're getting what we need. So if you see some of your friends look a little bit different than yours, it's okay. They're accountable to their grader in that sense. Okay, so I'm just going to keep using the purple colors to keep going here. But again, so we've been talking about insides, and now we're on outsides. I'm just going to this is the outside, okay? This is a little small. I'm gonna go over here. So this is an outside taking the inside. So I'm gonna go, this is the structure of it. To actually understand structure, again, a primary observation means I'm gonna take a literary observation tool, repeated word, who, where, when, rhetorical question, like, anyway, all of those things. And then I'm going to take this observation and know that I want to build on this thought. We're going to start using these words called builds. This is what we're talking about. So when we say your segment thing, we're talking about this whole thing. If I'm saying a build, I'm talking about one of these, okay? So, because we're building on thoughts, building on observations. So, let's see. I want to do like an actual one. All right, I'm going to do verse 10. No, verse 11. Okay, let's see. Okay, formerly he was useless to you, but now he is indeed useful to you and to me. Okay, so formerly he was useless to you. I'm going to do contrast because the word but is in there. So in my structure, I would put contrast in parentheses, and then I am going to write out, just make sure I get this one. Okay, I'm going to write out my contrast being verse 11. Formerly he was useless to you. Okay, useless, but now useful. And then I'm quoting 1:11, okay? So that is an example of what I am observing, this first thing. Okay, so you would have brought it out over here if it was down here, 1:11, something like that. I would have written out useful versus, I don't know, useless, sorry. It would have been here, and I would have pulled it over here. So again, like this was purple, this would be purple. I would be pulling this one up. Okay, does that make sense? Sorry, it just wasn't on the board yet.
I would just say that with the verses wouldn't be in the text.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so those are paragraph titles?
Yes,
They're paragraph titles.
paragraph titles and insides.
Yeah. So, okay. This one, I'm just going to preface this.
So this is the paragraph title.
Yeah, that would be paragraph title. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
We put our paragraph titles into our segments, so there are verse references on the insides. Go ahead. But when you're writing your things out, you don't need to use the verse reference on the insides. I'm asking you to do it on the outsides. Okay, this is going to help you 5 years from now when you're looking back. Go right to the verse. Then also helps your grader to be able to see where we look. I can pull out my Bible right now and look with you. Okay, so I'm going to observe this whole section as a contrast. So my contrasting question might be why or what is being contrasted in this verse, even as the example on the board. So I'm going to say who, because we know it's a person who is being contrasted, or what is being contrasted. You can pick whatever you would want. So that would be my question that I'm asking as an observation question. If I wanted to, I could put a little indent and do a supporting observation. And for me, I would want to go ahead and add Onesimus in there. So I go verse 10, and I go who, because I'm looking at Onesimus. So my literary observation tool is right there, very clear. And then I would say who is being contrasted. I mean, I would probably write.
You can say how is he being contrasted and then who he is.
It's more of the, I'm trying to show you the structure of how to write this. Because you're answering the question. Okay, instead, I'm just going to answer it. Okay, it would be.
Supporting is kind of the focus of the books, honestly.
Yeah, and then I put 1, 10. Because then 0. Okay. This is not for certain. I'm going to use a different color to show. Okay, so now what you're going to be doing is going to interpretation. However, there are some ways that you can add in different tools to help you build on your thoughts. Okay, so with this, I might want to do a word search. I might want to bring in other biblical books to answer these questions. I might want to bring in historical background. So in your interpretation section, we're going to call it INT. Oh, that's also not good for that group. Okay, so the next part of it is going to, wow. Yeah, you know the left. I think we're going to have to get new markers again. Praise God. Okay, so now we're moving to interpretation. We've been observing this entire time in the book. Okay, everything that we've done has been observing, looking at sources, looking at what we're thinking the main idea is, but now this is where we are going to take all the information that we have and we are going to try to form a good interpretive question. So, okay, I am observing something about Onesimus' name being useful or useless, and you're like, okay, this is very cool. So I'm going to ask a very, very good classic question you should always be thinking of in an SBS or any inductive study, which is, why is this significant? That is a basic question. If I want to get a little bit more in depth, I'm going to explain what I mean. Why is it significant that Onesimus is being contrasted? What is going on? Like, what's actually happening? So, why is it significant that Onesimus' name is being contrasted? Okay, so again, as a grader, if you write the first one, I'm going to be like, great. A few weeks down the line, I'm going to encourage you to write the second one, because that's a little bit clearer, a little bit, I can see where you're building your thought on. For me, I'm like, this is so interesting that he says useless and useful, and he's talking about a person. It's such a weird way to say this. Why is this significant? It's a little bit mean, and you're like, what's happening? Like, what is actually going on here? So, based on your historical background, any literary context that you would want to bring in, saying like, in the book of Colossians it says this, or in Revelation it says this. Right now I'm not going to do any of that. What I would bring into my answer is historical background, and I would do a word search here. The reason for this is that if we look up the meaning of Onesimus' name, it's actually in the footnotes of your Bible.
So when she says literary context and word search, that's what this is. Okay, we'll go into detail on that. But we want it on the board so then you guys can see it when we go through it, so you can reference it.
Okay, the bottom of the page says Onesimus means useful. So, what we can interpret from the scriptures, why is it significant that Paul uses this phrase? What would you guys say?
It's his name.
Okay, how would you pull that out a little bit more? Okay, that's his name, so why is it significant that Paul used that? Yeah.
Because Paul once called him useless, and now he's calling him into his church. It's useful.
Okay, awesome. Let's go a little further. Laura.
It's because his name from the beginning was useful, and that just goes to show that his identity is it wasn't what he was classified as. So Paul took his identity from something that he never was supposed to be, to something
Yeah.
that he was supposed to be.
So good. Okay, I want us to go even further. Think of historical background. I want you to think of slavery at the time. What are consequences if you have run away?
Aren't
Dead.
words like expensive?
Slaves are expensive.
Then you have to find out.
You've got to do different things. So think of everything that Philemon has lost. Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say that, yeah, as a slave, it's like very important to be a useful person. Like that is what brings you worth. Is like, are you able to do your job well? Probably. So his worth was probably very low as not being there for his job, being useless.
Yeah.
So he's saying like he is still worth something. His name is not just his name, it is also his character and the way that he works.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what you're looking for.
Super good, super good. See, we're going somewhere. Let's keep digging, keep going through it. My question is, has anybody looked up the kinds of death that you would have as a slave? Has anybody thought of it? Yeah.
I read a little bit about something about how, this is like so intense, but they like wrapped like chains around people's necks.
Yeah.
And then like dragged them around until they died.
Yeah.
Like making the death as long as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of it is going to be things like that. One of the biggest ways is also crucifixion.
What?
And if you think even further,
Yep.
I want you to think about what he has been saved into. And if someone has caused you deep, deep pain by running away and not being there, and then you get a letter back and says, hey, you should receive him, not only is it his identity, not only is it the meaning of his name, not only is it what Christ has done for him, but there's also so many factors as to why this phrase that Paul uses in one scripture is significant. So, you have the ability to take one of those veins and write about it. You can go for it here, okay? So I want to see some like sentences, all right? I need to see, well, according to the historical background, this actually says this, or this is happening, so therefore, in this way, this would actually be quite significant to the original audience of Philemon when he's looking not only at the meaning of his name, but he's also looking at Jesus and what he paid for himself. And then I'm seeing the brother, a slave who is now a brother, and I have to extend the same thing to him, but yet the meaning of his name was being useful, even though he's very useless, but now should I bring him back? Like, there's a lot here about the forgiveness of God, the reconciliation, but it's so ingrained in one little sentence. You can do that with every sentence in this book. And we're going to share a whole lot more in the future, but I would challenge you, man, if you feel like I can find anything, go a little deeper, try a little bit more. Okay, but I'm going to quickly show you what it should look like in your reference to bring in literary context, to bring in the word search, bring in whatever. So, okay, so I would be writing my answer, it is significant, whatever, and then I might want to say according to the time, I don't know, you would be bringing in your historical background. What I'm going to ask that you do, this is a requirement. If you're quoting something from historical background, I need to see you just writing whatever it is out, but then I need you to quote your BRI, okay? So it needs to be in your BRI already for you to use it in this section. If you can say HB if you want to. So, oh, yeah, sorry. Okay. So any historical background that you're using, your grader should be able to go back to your BRI and should be able to find it there. If it is not there, say you're looking things up in this section, add it to your BRI, okay? But I would also start to think through, are there any cool topics that you want to see? So slavery was a good one for Philemon, is to actually look into those things. If you want to, then quote another section of the Bible, which right now we're in just a different time where we don't have a whole lot of other books. This will be really significant quarter 2 and quarter 3 and the second half of this quarter as we study Acts. Say you're in your explanation, you're saying also in Leviticus 16, like then you would put LC, literary context. Okay, so it identifies, I'm using some literary context to build my interpretive thought. Then the last portion would be Onesimus. Name means, and then you would say useful. And then I would do word search, which honestly right now you can actually put the word search from the Bible, but all we need to see is a WS, okay? This is how you're gonna write your answers, all right? So you do not have to, in this step, go and quote everything and do another source. We're just asking to see the identifications within your answer, okay? This is a good argument, all right? To be able to look at interpretive thinking, again, we don't wanna look with our own perspective, or even today, we're only focusing on that time. This has nothing to do with me, nothing. This is not about me in 2025. This is only that time in what they would think about it. The last part of this step is going to be something called timeless truth or character nature. Okay, I'm gonna pull it up here so you guys can actually see, sorry. Just know that this is like one full thing we're going for. The last thing here, so it's significant and say, man, this is something I am going to now look at all of these thoughts. This is the culmination of my thoughts. What is one thing that I can pull from this interpretation that teaches me about God, about humanity, something that is timeless? Meaning, at the time of Adam and Eve, it was true. During my life, it's true. Generations down the line, it will still be true. This is, again, not something like an opinion. This is not something that was true for today, but not for another time. Like if we said, you know, phones are like the best thing ever. You know, phones were not existing back in the Old Testament. You know, you think through all of those different things. So what is a timeless truth that we could pull from our interpretive thought? It might be something like, let me just pull this out. Redemption is available for all people. Something like that. Because if we're looking at the sins of Onesimus, he's a slave, but he's also a sinner. He has hurt someone. That would be true for all time. This is actually true since the beginning. God has always had redemption available. Another option could be that you are talking about the character and nature of God. In that case, if you're saying God is, I want you to rather use not timeless truth, but I want you to use something called C&N, which is character and nature. This is going to be very important for your last assignment, okay? We want to really focus on the character and nature of God in this school, but we are not requiring that you do only the character and nature of God. This obviously does say something about God, but I'm not saying God is this. This is a generalized, timeless truth that is true for all time. But a different one, character and nature of God, could be God is forgiving. So this one, I would need to see as a grader. If you're choosing to focus on the character of God, you're saying God is. All right, does that make sense? Yeah, Mariah.
You want to go first?
Can you do both? Is the goal to just do one timeless truth or one character nature, or could you like machine gun a few out, or is it to be the goal to be focused?
I think you're going to do multiple of these. So, I mean, this is just one on one page. And if you're in Genesis, you know, you've got so many different thoughts there. I would say try to hone in on what is my main point that really stands out above them all. However, there are going to be tons to focus on. So I would say prayerfully consider which one you want to write down and make it really significant. However, if you do have multiple that you just can't let go of and you want to remember, then I would say it's okay to put in there. For sure. As long as you understand this is a full, like the biggest build that you could do, okay? So you can obviously add more supporting observations if you want to. This can be super long if you want it to be. But we also want to show you something small. Other ones that you don't have to do this every single time. But the goal of this, you need at least one of these bigger ones every single segment. So every page that you have, we need to see at least one of these. However, I will say this is one of the best parts of the SBS. This is where it gets going. And you're like, dang, everything I've been working on, we are now thriving. Like, it is so interesting. It's tedious and it's like insane sometimes, but it's so fun. So I would recommend, if you're getting going, go. Like, just go there, okay? But we'll show you another one, a shorter version. But any more questions on this one?
So at least one full build per book or per chapter?
Per page. We call this a segment. So your insides and then the outer page, you're going to be writing all of this on the side. So I need to see at least one that goes all the way to timeless truth or character nature on every page.
Okay. So most books, Philemon is small, so you won't have like a bunch of different segments, right? But a book like Ephesians, you'll have more than one segment because of the horizontal. So we'll get a little bit more in detail of what we mean by segment when we get into Titus and Ephesians and Mark. So you'll break down the book even further, where Philemon isn't broken down that much. Okay. So the phrase segment isn't yet that familiar to you, but we'll get there.
Yeah. Okay, Mariah, you got a question?
Sorry, I did have a question about the timeless statement. That's a little new for me. It's just my train of thought, so tell me if I'm wrong. Like if I was a secular humanist, like redemption is available for all people. Like I can't redeem all people, and what if I decide like it is not, like if you did something wrong and I didn't have the ability to redeem you because of authority or hierarchy or whatever, wouldn't it make more sense for it to be God's redemption is available? That makes it timeless because He's the only one. Or is that too?
I would say that in itself is interpretive. But if you're reading that as a secular humanist, you're saying redemption is available for all people. This is being left open-ended on purpose, where it's like, obviously, we're studying the Bible. We're studying this for all of these things. So when I read this, I know that it's talking about Christ. I know that it's talking about that. I'm not going to require you to put that there. If you want to do that, I'd say move to the character and nature of God, for sure. I will say, we're trying to separate these two because of the last assignment, and you'll understand that in the end, because it's awesome what the application is going to look like. But this can almost always go here, okay? Anything that you write here usually can go right here, okay? So what we're trying to show you is that it doesn't have to be God is every time. We're trying to show you some of that time you're going to be like, humans are simple. That's the timeless truth. It's going to be timeless, since the beginning. Yes, okay. Anyways, but in this, it's like, this is something I don't want you to feel like every single time I need to write God is. That's why we're separating those two. Yeah. Okay.
So just to be sure, I kind of just wrote a bunch of, like, on my SBS charter, I wrote, like, what? So let's say for the first one, I was like, bold, command, love, appeal, and that's just, it's not something I highlighted necessarily or done with my literary observation. It's just something I wanted to go deeper into. Does it have to be something I highlight, or can it be just random things where I'm like, I want to figure that out?
Like with your color code?
Yeah.
Yeah, you can put anything on your insides, for sure. It doesn't have to be color coded. Yeah, for sure. And then you can build off of it as well.
It just has to be highlighted here to here.
Yeah.
So that
Like we need to see the connection.
Okay.
Yeah. So you would just have to write it here to be able to use it. That's all. Yeah, Sheldon.
Question was, like, on the inside you put what you have highlighted, right? So on the OP on the side, do we have to focus on everything, single thing you highlighted, or?
No. So the insides are going to be the things you're most interested in. It's going to be things you think are the most significant to the main idea of this book. And also some things you're like, I have no idea what that was. If I have the time, I might build on it. I might choose to actually go in depth. You do not have to do every single thing here. You're going to pick and choose a few.
Take a lifetime.
You won't have enough room to do that, or time in general. That's a very good question. Yeah. Okay, can we just show you guys at least a smaller version of this? Because this is, we want to see one big one, But now we're going to show you just a few times that you can do just observation or just observation interpretation.
Do you want me to then go back for this?
Yeah. All right, quickly, we're just going to go through a few examples of how to make things shorter. So say you don't necessarily want to go super in-depth on this, but you were like, dude, this is so cool. I want to actually keep track of this as an observation. So again, it's going to be something like what Seth wrote over here. So let's see, I'm going to take our Father, and I'm just going to put it over here. You can circle under whatever it is, it's in black over here. So I'm going to say primary observation, who, and I'm going to say it's like our Father, which was which verse?
3.
3. Thank you, 3. Okay, so 1, 3. So, okay. So I might say, who is Paul talking about? Then I would want to also address that this is our Father. It's not just one person's Father. So I'm going to say it's our Father. And then I would say highlighting that our. Okay, so I might just want to see, our is what I was looking at, and this is just one observation that I'm taking to the side. Now, if I wanted to interpret that, I could go for it, but actually, I just find it significant, and I want to keep it there. I'm done. That is one short build right there.
I would maybe the question I would change is like, whose father are we talking about?
That's right.
Right. So if you're whose father are we talking about?
That's way better. Thank you. That's what I was trying
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm like, hold on. Something's wrong. So then I would be like, it's our Father. This is something really significant, and I, would want to build on there, or maybe not. Then on another side of the page, I might want to bring in, yeah. I'm going to say, remember you in prayer. So, I'm going to say,
what would you guys think if we were going to do prayers as a primary observation? What would be the literary observation tool? So go to your manual, look through the literary observation tool. What would you think prayers would be as a literary observation tool?
Repeated word of phrase.
This keyword one.
Yeah, keywords one.
Keyword.
okay, let's do repeated word.
You could do that.
I'm gonna
That would be going on this.
Yeah. Okay. We're gonna go with the repeated word. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna say what is being repeated? And then I would go, what is this? 4, so it's 1 prayers or prayer. This would be 1, 4. Where else are we seeing it? 6. Okay, so you would basically just write down every verse reference that it is repeated in here if you're doing a repeated word. So if there's more, I'm not going to look right now. But, okay, so say we like this one, but I want to go a little bit more in depth, but I don't have time to do the entire thing. So I'm going to go into an interpretive question, and I'm going to say, why is it significant that Paul is remembering them in his prayers?
Another one where I kind of went with my thought is, why is Paul praying? Just even a totally different question.
Yeah.
So there's multiple ways you can even do one thing.
Or even, why is it significant that Paul is praying? Like, it's, you just keep going into what I would be going after in my own heart when I think of this is, what is the power of prayer? Like, what is actually happening here? And so then I would want to start to answer with anything here. You live in a context where people pray to gods all the time that never get answered. So why is Paul praying to Christ? What is actually happening here? I'd take the historical background and I'd answer that.
Yeah, and then you can build and go like, what does it mean to Philemon receiving this letter, reading this, going, okay, Paul is actually writing out what he's praying for me. Right?
Yeah.
What would that mean to him as the original reader of the letter? Like, there's so many different ways you can dissect this thing.
Anyways, so this is just another one that you could do. Here's a short one, here's like a medium one, and the one we did before is a longer one. Okay.
So these would be considered a build, whereas the long one is a full build. You're requiring a full build for every segment page that is in your book you're studying.
Okay.
Full build is going to have time to truth or clarification.
Yes.
Okay, so we want to give you guys a chance with us in the classroom to give you guys opportunity to do this, okay? So we didn't read through the manual because we figured this would be a little bit easier. So then when I read through the manual, you will understand what we're talking about. So we did it a little visual first, now we're going to read through it, okay? Yes?
So the triple thing, you corrected Riley on not studying BRI but studying HP. But then manual starts with HP, parentheses, and then the definition of BRI and parentheses. Okay,
So it's both of them? Yeah, you can do both. That's fine. Do it how the manual says. Okay, so quick thing on this is segment summaries. We didn't get into this, but also in this is you need to summarize what the whole segment is about. Okay? So for example, here it's just the introduction, so it's a real quick summary. What is the introduction about? It is about Paul writing to the church with Philemon and these people, and so you just summarize what that whole little segment is about, and you summarize it, okay? So in this section, you summarize the theme of each segment. This summary should give a good overview of the big picture of the segment. It should logically flow from the segment title and insights, okay? The summary is required in each segment to be considered a completed segment. Besides, the summary should be no more than a few sentences. So real simple. Basically, the goal of this is to look at your segment summary and know what the entire thing is about. Now, with Philemon, it's not as big of a deal because it's so small. But when you're sifting through Isaiah and you've got longer charts and you've got big segments and whatnot, and you need 4 sentences that summarize it, they can be very helpful. Okay. All right. So then, step 8 is the interpretation step. So we did inside observations, outside observations. You color code when you do your inside observations. You jump to outside observations. Then you step 8 is the interpretations, which we already walked through. So I'm just going to read through it in more detail here. Why did the author say this? So this is where you ask the questions why. To discover the meaning of the text when it was written. What did this mean to the original reader/hearer? Okay, your BRI is the bridge for interpretation. What does it reveal about the author, the original reader or hearer, or God's character and nature? Okay, so this is all just kind of explaining what we just went through. Analyze the text's meaning to the original reader or hearer. Interpretation is determining what the book or passage meant when it was first written. Interpretation is not what it means to the 21st century reader. Okay? You are not interpreting for yourself. Okay? You are interpreting what would it mean to them. Okay? Application, which is the final step, is what it now means for you and for the world today. Okay? So you need to separate those two things. Very important. Ask why questions and build from one question to another as you guys solve. Okay? There's many, you can get real big and deep with it. It's so fun. With interpretation, consider author's intent, original reader, original hearer, the historical and cultural background, literary context, word search, okay, which we went through. Okay? Interpretation builds on the foundation of observation. Okay, so that's why everything up to this point is so much observation that you can build something really deep and profound, and it's authentic, right? So when someone asks you, what was the character nature you did, right? When someone asks you that God is forgiving, right? You can then walk them through your whole build, and they're like, oh my gosh, right? More often than not, I've seen so many people go, okay, why do you believe what you believe? And they're like, oh, because of the Bible says. And it's like, for many, that's flaky. It's kind of fake. So, but when you have your whole build, another way of saying it is a belief tree, right? You have this whole thing in you of like, I can tell you right now at least 60 different ways of why I believe God is forgiving. And you can just list them, right? So then when someone wants to wrestle with you on why is God forgiving, you have an arsenal of reasons as to why he's forgiving. Okay? Observation focuses on what does the text say. Interpretation builds on the observation. For example, why is this said to the original reader? Observation, what does the text say? Why is the bridge? Interpretation, what was the intended meaning for the text when it was written? And then there's a whole list of questions here to help guide you in your process of interpretation. Okay? So the manual again is your friend. Say, the manual is my friend. The manual is my friend. Read it, reread it. Have it right next to you when you're going through your interpretations. At the beginning, you will have a more difficult time thinking of questions. Right? Whereas you saw Riley and I were like, oh, you can ask this question, you can ask this question, you can ask this question. So, but because we've done it a lot. So you can have this manual right next to you and just ask a question that said, why is this said? You know, why is this word, statement, phrase, or concept repeated? So we use the repeated word here. Why is this repeated? Which is what we literally wrote it, okay? So these questions are there to aid you in your interpretation process, okay? All right, so there's a whole bunch of these are literary context questions and then points to consider, okay? Please go, we're not going to get through all of it because I really would like you guys to have the next 10 minutes to get through the interpretation. So, let's jump into a full build and we'll have staff provide and help you guys, okay? How does that sound? Great? Any thoughts, Riley?
Now, as long as they know this is the 5th reading.
Yes.
This is the 5th time we were reading the book.
Reading it basically
Yeah.
for your notes. Okay? All right. So start looking through what are some of those observations on the inside that you wrote, and then start writing on the outside. Okay, this is my outside observation. This is what I'm observing, and start with that book. Yeah, I will. All right.
Like, probably the most significant portions of that conversation are titles. So things are being
What is a TP sound? Timeless is LC because that is a literary context. It's another verse this whole person. Okay, so for instance, on this page, I've already done so I still need a full close on this. So what I understand of this is you basically create your own summary of what works for you. And that's why we I just want us to do a full close up. What's worthy of operation?
I'm good at it. Yeah, that's what I did my position in the instance. So now I'm taking the
I did my inside like pretty synchronized. Make one.
I have a question. I see if I write something here.
Yeah, then I'm going to go back to my videos.
How do I say it? So it's
Is he going where?
so
So focusing on this so you can use this as your primary generation, whatever. Like you said, for this segment, you would start with that, and then you could say, why not this? What did this move into 5 minutes? Why would this be important 5 minutes? And then you could incorporate how the main purpose of this whole thing is yada yada yada. So this is starting with
That would be where the so then you would put campuses between and you would write your reference. And then that could support your idea. No, it's just supporting an argument. So your main answer would have to be more about all feels this way. Because that's the instance how small specifically goes in first. It wouldn't be about this just supports that. So just make sure the focus stays in here. Because this without context is very tough.
As like a
I don't know how to get that.
That's really my goal. Be a little bit more creative. But you definitely do that will help you like that's how you're actually you could do like working out just by doing
I get the sense that that would go, or a good idea for it to
I guess
what do you mean by on the
Do you have any questions?
questions so far? I am
That's
simple to see things. I was just like, is this too much time? Yeah, I was thinking also about character nature household that makes sense. So I feel building a main or two builds and some characteristics of
again, some of these are very important, but some of them will be like 2 hours. Okay, highlight that. Or another one would be sometimes actually not referring to, it's actually referring to all of the people that so something like that would be called so then you're like, okay, it's actually not just so there's like little nuance things that you could do that. Yeah, so as you go,
yes, that's perfect.
So we're just gonna know that Wednesdays will be a little bit shorter. I have a few announcements, and then you guys can keep working if you want to work. We have for the staff in here, we've got Love Feast tonight. Anybody else? You guys have the afternoon. There's no house groups, which we will talk about house groups next week as you guys are all joining house groups. One thing about the assignments I just want to say is that we are now having Philemon be due tomorrow. Okay, so it's not going to be due tonight on Google Classroom. We want to take one more day and just go through it a little bit more. We are still starting Titus tomorrow afternoon. So we're going to finish Philemon tomorrow morning, but it won't be due till the evening. Okay, so we are going to get into Titus during class second half, but then you'll have the time to turn in the rest and continue with Titus. We're going to go through Titus the rest of the week and into next week a little bit more. Again, this assignment and all of these things, please have grace with yourself. You're figuring it out. Be patient with your heart. Be patient with your mind. Keep asking questions. And yes, we're running into little nuances here and there, but keep going to the manual. Keep looking at the different examples. You guys are doing great. And it doesn't have to be perfect right off the bat, okay? We're just learning. And so allow us to help you when you ask those questions, when we give you feedback, but go for it. Just have so much fun and create. Okay, the other announcements, plagiarism document. If you guys signed that, please give it to your, I'll be here, just looking back. Please come give it to me right after this. And the second one, Bree, can you send that on the group? We have a Google form being sent out from Bree on our group chat about work duties. So our school is, our school has already allocated within the SBS, like we say it's about 68 hours. We've put 2 hours in there for work duties for you to know that your kitchen duty counts as one already, and you'll have either classroom hospitality or speaker hospitality. Those are the 2 other ones that we're bringing in, so please fill out this form based on which one you would like to help out with, and then we will meet with you guys the next few days talking about what that looks like and time frames for that, and a schedule for who goes when, okay? Perfect, that is all for today. James, you have a question?
Will it be good to have finished by tomorrow morning? Before tomorrow morning?
So complete your, at least try to get through those full builds on both of the divisions or segments. Just complete that, and then what I'd like for you to do is continue reading through the manual, get to the book summary, which is step 9, and if you can, do the book summary. Okay, that is in your Google Classroom. There's a book summary doc under the Philemon assignment. Do the book summary based off of what you read in the manual. Okay, and then we'll talk about it tomorrow. And then go ahead and read further in the manual into application and get as far as you can, okay, into book summary and application. If you don't touch it, that's fine. I'm just giving you permission to move forward so that when we talk about book summary and application tomorrow, you have at least an awareness of what we're talking about. Cool? Great.
Okay. Perfect. Thanks, guys. Have a good rest of your day, and for the staff, we'll see you tonight. Okay, bye.
See you tonight.